So I'm sure that most of you already know, and it's not necessarily news to you anymore, but on Friday, they actually announced that Vanguard Zero will be ending in not just the English server, but also in the Japanese server as of the end of June, I believe June 30th of this year, so in merely 2 months time. Now, I've already attempted to record this video multiple times, which is part of the reason why it's coming out pretty late. On the day of, I recorded a very emotionally charged one where I was just kind of like pretty angry. I think the entire day I was just kind of disappointed and sad and angry, or a mixture of all those three. I tried to record on stream to kind of like just go unscripted and have at it, but I think now, having waited a little bit, you know, a couple days, and calmed down a little bit, I think I'd rather talk about it in more sort of, you know, controlled, a more calm manner, and just kind of break down, you know, what Zero was for this game, what Zero has done, and why, you know, it means both so much and so little with it ending, or what it implies. So Zero came out at a very good timing for English specifically. For JP, I wouldn't necessarily say so much, but it basically came out at a time where the TCG was sort of in a struggle state because it was during its arguably worst power creep era, or it was about to start, I would say. And, you know, this is basically the sort of, it's kind of funny, but this is sort of when the G era units were starting to come into the V series, and it felt like it was just power creep after power creep after power creep in every single set. And to make things worse, it was also the pandemic had just started. So for the TCG itself, things were looking pretty grim, and for TCGs in general, this was before the big sort of like bubble market of, you know, the TCG market in general, of collectors and Logan Paul, etc. I think a lot of you already know how that story goes, but before that, TCGs felt very shaky because you couldn't go outside, you couldn't meet with people, you couldn't play face-to-face, and there were no events at the time for TCGs either, so nobody knew where this would go. Like, would this entire like hobby just die because there's no way to play it? And of course, luckily they didn't. But at the beginning of the pandemic, it wasn't that clear. Nobody actually knew what was going to happen. And so Zero came out at a really good time where a lot of people were looking for something new to do during the pandemic. It was kind of already after Animal Crossing had kind of like calmed down a little bit, I would say, in terms of its initial hype. And so a lot of people that both played Vanguard in the past or have never heard of it started playing Vanguard. And that was really, really good because a lot of people got to touch the franchise for the first time, and that was really awesome. And in my opinion, from the very beginning, I was saying this, but Zero's role is to basically bring in new people that have never played the TCG into the actual TCG itself, one way or another. Now, some people that do not have, you know, that live in the middle of nowhere, or don't have a way to get to locals, or don't have locals that support Vanguard or something, obviously they went to other things like other digital card games or other games in general, or just, you know, moved on with life. But a lot of people that started with Zero ended up playing the TCG, and that ended up being a really nice thing for us actual TCG players. Now, for me, from the very get-go, this channel, you know, has been around for almost 10 years now, and I've been, you know, obviously Zero's only been out for 3, so you can probably put the 2 and 2 together. I am a primarily and by far mainly TCG YouTuber, and when Zero came out, I was like, well, I support anything that is related to Vanguard. Like when Vanguard EX came out on the Switch and it was only a Japanese release, I bought it and, you know, streamed it and made videos of it because I support anything that comes out with Vanguard in it. When Zero came out in Japanese, I played the Japanese version because I wanted to support and make content about anything that has the Vanguard IP in it. To me also, I was like, the moment that Vanguard gets any kind of online client, I will spend money on it because that is my way of also showing support to my beloved IP. It doesn't matter how that IP is actually treated. I wanted to put in money to it just because I wanted to support the actual franchise. And nowadays, you know, it's doing much better. At the time, I felt a little bit scared because I felt that if I don't put in some monetary support, maybe Vanguard won't last much longer. But luckily now, I'm very thankful that the TCG itself, unlike Vanguard Zero, the TCG itself is more popular than ever, and it's actually in a very good state, especially here in Japan. So now I don't feel that kind of like, oh, I must spend to support the franchise anymore, because it just kind of gets by on its own. Every single set sells out, you know, there's tournaments are filled everywhere. It's honestly a really good time to be a Vanguard TCG player. But so with Zero, you know, I sometimes get these criticisms like, why can you be angry, or why are you annoyed that Vanguard Zero ended? How dare you speak rudely to Game Studio? And because you spend money. And it's like, yes, I spent money because I wanted to support the actual Vanguard IP in any way that I could, and especially during the pandemic, there wasn't really much else. Like, releases were delayed, you could barely get new cards, and, you know, when they would come out delayed, there'd be no tournaments, there was like no real reason to buy cards. So that kind of like, I feel like Vanguard Zero helped to cushion the kind of like most dangerous era of Vanguard's lifetime, and now that it's recovered entirely, it is basically in a state where people don't even play play digital card games as much. Or I had this talk with one of my fellow friends, Ignitius, who does Shadowverse content, about how it just feels like digital card games in general have been on a slight decline. I'm not saying they're dying, but it feels like digital card games in general, compared to their physical TCG counterparts, are having a lot less growth, because physical TCGs have been booming ever since the pandemic has calmed down, because people want to have that face-to-face interaction again. They got tired of being stuck at home all the time, and now they want to actually be out there talking to people and actually interacting with people, which is like, digital TCGs are great when you want to play something at home, but you lack that kind of face-to-face factor that, you know, physical TCGs have. But now, so that's kind of like enough talking about like background information and stuff. I think Vanguard Zero, as I have said now, you know, filled a very important void in the timeline, let's say, for, you know, Vanguard's livelihood. But Vanguard Zero from the very beginning lacked something that made Vanguard unique, which is the battle phase mechanics. And that's why a lot of people didn't actually play Zero that play the TCG, because you didn't have guarding. You didn't have like that pressure of the battle phase. And that's literally what makes Vanguard unique, is everything that happens in the battle phase. Sorry, I made some coffee, so I'm going to quickly sip. But so basically, you have a simulator, let's say, in Vanguard Zero that takes out the most unique part of Vanguard itself. And so a lot of people didn't like that, so they didn't even try Vanguard Zero. But during the pandemic, quite a few of the TCG players did try it out, and then just kind of, you know, went away. Even Solemn played it for a little bit and then dropped off because he realized it wasn't for him. And now for those of us that just like Vanguard in general, like I love the IP, I love the anime, I love all the art and the music, etc., the characters, you know, I was like, yeah, it's fine. I mean, these rules are different, but I still want to play it. And so I basically was like, okay, I'm gonna, at the start, when it was just a Japanese release, the Japanese release wasn't popular at all. Like, my content for Zero JP at the beginning was terribly performing. It was bombing. It was like almost felt like a mistake to upload Zero content because of how little interest there was in it. But then when the English version came out, we were blessed by the timing of the English version and the fact that there were some content creators like Shady Penguin that jumped on it and basically opened people's eyes towards it. And then of course, you know, I'm internally thankful to Vanguard Zero because I got so much growth on my channel thanks to it. And honestly, making Zero content was relatively light. Like, it was quite easy to make it, and you basically could just, you know, make a deck, playtest it a little bit, and then press record, present it, and that's it. That was most of my deck and fights, right? And then as long as you're a relatively entertaining personality, that's going to be okay. But, you know, actually don't want to just be sitting here talking to you guys all the time, but actually, you know, pull up the game itself. But as you can see, you know, the game is ending and it is pretty sad. But basically the writing for the game being like done has been on the wall for a while. Like, everyone kind of felt, especially on the JP side, that this game is going to end relatively soon, because once they finished up with GZ, they just didn't announce anything. They just kept doing rank rewards for a bunch of the old cards, and, you know, essentially you just kind of like, it ran out of gas, right? It ran out of gas and there was nothing else to be added. The base game was built from the get-go in a way that was not going to sustain, because in a way the game was in this really odd state in terms of, like, if it was ever going to go to V series, the build of it being the way it is, you know, not like Shadowverse where it's like a big wide board, it's just, you know, this vertical screen, like, was already built horribly with the idea of the V series in mind, right? Because how are you going to make axle circles? And so immediately it was kind of this feeling, okay, like when G ends, they probably have to go to overdress, or maybe like make original units, or like make stuff from premium collection and like change the effects or something. But at the end of the day, they just said, nope, we're not even doing that. And to me, the saddest thing is that the game is shutting down 2 months after the announcement of the end of service. And to me, that's really sad, because one of my other beloved mobile games that ended is Dragalia Lost. And when Dragalia Lost announced its end of service, they basically gave half a year, and they also wanted to make sure that they finish the story of the game and make sure that everyone has time to enjoy it and just save all their memories and everything. Whereas for us here, it's like, the one nice thing is that they announced that they'll be uploading every single story and character story and event story to the official YouTube. So that's actually pretty rare. So they actually are going to memorialize, you know, or memorialize all of these stories in the game, which I think is really cool. But even now, like, looking back at some of these rank arts, it's like, it feels quite sad not knowing if like these beautiful rank arts will be made into actual physical cards or not. Some of them have already been, you know, some of them do already exist in the TCG, but there's definitely a lot of beautiful art in Vanguard Zero that was basically created as original art that we don't know when/if it will be ever added to the actual TCG, especially with V series not really getting supported anymore either. So just like scrolling through a lot of these, it's like, It also makes me realize, how much like high effort a lot of the effects and stuff were at the beginning of the game. Until we got into G, like when you activate an effect of a triple rare card, it would have its own unique animation. It felt like there was so much effort. You had like challenge fights, so we could try out decks before building them. And overall, the game was actually very free-to-play friendly. This is something that I think people have also talked about, some other content creators have also talked about, like Zura. Before G, the game was actually very free-to-play friendly in terms of like, if you play the game regularly and climb ladder, you'd have enough gems to basically just open a bunch of packs and just craft whatever you wanted. Ever since it got into G with GRs, it basically went completely opposite of that and didn't give you that opportunity anymore. So while GRs are not necessarily, like the worst thing per se, it's the way that it was handled that was horrible. Like this 5,000 crafting cost was asinine from the beginning. Like it was immediately obvious that this was not going to be sustainable, and it's also going to be just basically just asking for money from the players. And unfortunately, because of how like predatory the game became in terms of like, yes, spend money if you want to finish your decks, a lot of players quit. So basically the game lost most of its player base, I think, throughout the G era. And it's always sad to me because I really liked the G era back then, and it feels like twice now Bushiroad has gone and said, oh, you like the G era? Well, here's a really like horrible rendition of it for your like nostalgia's sake. So the V series rendition of G era was like nothing but power creep, and while the gameplay was relatively fun, it wasn't necessarily what I was hoping for. And then in Zero, the gameplay was fun, I would say very, very fun. That's like one of the big selling points of Zero in general, is that the gameplay of Zero was actually really fun despite being a departure from the actual rules of Vanguard. But the way to build decks after we got into G was just ridiculous, right? It just became so crazy where you basically were forced to just kill all of your SPs to have enough crafting material for anything, because it was just such a weird system. It was just such a like predatory system. And it feels crazy to think that back in like the limit break era, during break ride, they would do like SP raid up gacha and things like that. And of course, I think the game was probably not making enough money during the original series before it got into G, and so because it wasn't making enough money, even though the player base was relatively big, they had to basically cut down on a lot of things like the animations and a lot of the things that would cost a little bit to make. But obviously, because they release sets every single month, those costs added up, and basically just led into the situation where now it's just like, well, you basically are gonna have to deal with this half-baked game. It's still gonna be fun to play, luckily, but at the same time it just didn't really feel very rewarding to play, because I myself, like, I kept opening packs almost every set, and I still spent money basically every month, that by the time that they stopped updating it, I felt a relief. I was like, finally, I don't have to do this anymore. And to be honest, if it wasn't for being a content creator and for having such an amazing community in you guys, I probably would have quit Zero a while ago. Like, obviously my attachment to G might have kept me in, but I would have built a lot less decks and probably not spent any money, because the big reason why I even spent money in the first place on this game is because I wanted to make decks and cover them and basically just like give resources to the community, so that before you have to put in your resources, because gems in particular, whether they were free to play or paid, were pretty limited. And so that players wouldn't have to necessarily like put in their resources, I would put in the resources and make content to showcase these decks and have fun with them in general, so that players can know how those decks move, if they want to build them or not, and whether they're interested or not as well. And so, whether I achieve that or not, I don't know. I can't tell you. Maybe you can tell me in the comments if any of my deck and fights ever convinced you to like go like, okay, I should probably commit to this, or maybe like a tier list I did in the past or something like that convinced you. And at the beginning of Zero, it's kind of sad to me to think about how just how passionate I was about Zero at the beginning, because when Zero was first announced, I was really, really excited. I was really excited because when, basically until V series, I didn't really have a stable income. Like, I got into Vanguard when I was still in high school, and in high school, I basically had to save, eat cheap lunches to save my pocket money, to be able to build any deck that I, even one deck that I wanted, and it would still be like half baked, like 2 PGs or something. And basically, even when I was in university, I would be a broke university student, because of course you're just living off of like some cheap part part-time work that you're doing, and you don't really have that much expendable income like someone that has full-time employment. So obviously once I eventually started having proper full-time employment and having a stable income, now I can build whatever I want and play the game as much as I like. But back then I couldn't. So I was like, wow, Zero's gonna actually let me relive those days in, you know, when I couldn't afford to build a lot of these decks that I wanted to play, right? I couldn't play ZTBs, couldn't play Night Rose, I couldn't play a lot of decks in Legion, I couldn't play a bunch of decks in the Break Right era like Link Joker. This game will let me do that, and that's gonna be awesome. And I think there's quite a lot of people that definitely felt that way in being able to like reapproach the decks that they missed out on or the times of the game that they missed out on. And so for me, it's been just kind of like a nice way to revisit the entire legacy of the game. And so unfortunately, it feels like the legacy of the game definitely dropped down quite a bit. And of course, it's nice that we got so many little things that were original to the game as well, like the art, as well as like, you know, we had the Hololive collabs, which is pretty impressive to think about. Of course, it feels like Bushiroad and Hololive have like some strong connection going, so it's probably part of the reason why it happened. But I'm also really glad that, for example, even these collab cards now are actually in the physical TCG as well, both in Japanese and soon in English, and at least that way it has been like, you know, memorialized. And, you know, I'll always remember like the couple times that I grinded ranked, you know, during the Lukier season or during the Azel season, and you know, I didn't really care about qualifying for the circuits too much because I would always like do commentary on them with WCC Kai, and you know, it was, those days were also super fun, you know, just being able to watch competitive competitive Vanguard Zero. But you know, just like even grinding for, you know, these rank rewards, like it's pretty sad. I've seen a lot of people posting on Twitter like, wow, all those hours that I put into grinding ranked, you know, and all that money that I spent on this game to full SP decks is just gone now. And it's like, yeah, it is. Like if you were not okay with that at the time of spending, then shouldn't have spent. Like when I spent in this game, for me it was always with the kind of like mission of making content, and I knew that eventually this game would shut down because it's not as successful as, let's say, Duel Links, that feels like it has more security and stability in staying alive. So, you know, while to me it hurts to know that this screen that I'm looking at of like all my SPs that I still have in game is going to fade away, at the same time it's like I'm also sort of at peace with it, because I knew from the very get-go that, you know, I'm not just also like archiving my experiences in the game through just what's in the game. By making videos, maybe 10 years later, somebody will get curious about what was Vanguard Zero like, you know, what was the gameplay like, or what did like this old archetype look like in Vanguard Zero, and they can just scroll through my channel and watch one of the like over 100 deck and fights that I've done on the game. And that's basically my plans going forward as well, that before the game shuts down in 2 months time, I want to pump out as many deck and fights of decks that I haven't done yet as possible, and basically just try to archive as many different decks as I can. I'm not going to be putting a single dime into the game, God forbid. I haven't actually put in any money into the game, I think, since the Gize set, and I do not plan to. There is no way you can get it out of me at this point, but I do want to make content still of some decks that I haven't featured, you know, whether it's Luard or Shiranui or some of the older ones. There's like Jewel Knights and stuff like that, or Gavriel. So definitely just want to kind of archive the game and be able to say like, hey, this is what this looked like back in the day, right? When the Cardfight online beta ran, I made videos and streamed that too. That's still on my channel from back when, you know, I was like a very early university student back then. And you can still watch that, right? It's still archived. You can still see what that looked like from way back when. And so that's kind of what I want to do with Zero as well. And you know, it's pretty sad that it is ending, because honestly, this was a very great way to get people into Vanguard and having an actual online simulator for the game that, you know, even Dear Days feels like it has kind of failed on doing, because while Dear Days is obviously, you know, a cool game in that it will never end, quote unquote, because it's a console game, right? So even if it never gets updated anymore, you can still play it whenever you want. The same can't be said for Zero, and that's why I prefer console game approaches like this as well, is because with live service games, obviously you have successes like Master Duel, but then you have, you know, lack of success like Triple Monsters. For those of you that remember that, you know, Triple Monsters was a game that was actually made by Bushiroad and Game Studio as well, that basically died after 8 or 10 months, and it was really sad because they had like the artist that basically, he did the character designs for Digimon Cyber Sleuth and Devil Survivor, and he did like the designs for that, and then the game just died because Game Studio or Bushiroad, I'm assuming it's more so Game Studio because I've heard more bad things about Game Studio since moving to Japan from Japanese people. It's pretty crazy that Bushiroad chose to hire them again after they fumbled Triple Monsters for Vanguard Zero, and I think honestly, if the game had been done in a better way, maybe wouldn't have been fumbled so hard, because the crafting system from the beginning was flawed because of it being based on clans, and in general I feel like the releases were very fast paced and it felt so different from your typical online card game, you know, like whether it's Runeterra or Shadowverse or Duel Masters Plays or Duel Links. And so from the beginning it just felt flawed, and I think the marketing in the early half of the game was pretty good. Like, I mean, I'm very privileged to say that I appeared in an ad for the game because they chose to take clips of my streams and use them for ads for Vanguard Zero, and like, to me that's crazy that I'm part of that kind of legacy of this game and being in an ad, and like, I don't know if I'll ever get that kind of privilege again, and having been able to, you know, even say that is crazy to me. But ever since we got into G, it feels like the global side of the developers tried to pull things out of, you know, the gutter as much as possible, right? They listened to the community, they added playmats, they still did tournaments, you know, the JP side also did tournaments, but they made like the long-term player bonuses. Like, there was so much stuff that the global side tried to do to breathe life into the game, or at the same time, like, maybe they already knew that the game was going to end, and so they just wanted to make it as pleasant of an experience for the remaining players as possible. Whereas in the JP side, they were just like, yeah, we're unplugging this game anyway, so why should we care? It's honestly sad to think about how free-to-play friendly and how generous this game used to be, and how greedy it became, right? Like, not even having the effect animations and stuff like that. Like, maybe I can go back to some of the old gacha packs, because you could usually look back at the old gacha packs and see the animations. Let's take a look and see. I think it would be, yeah, you can still see them. So let's look back at some very nostalgic sets, right? So for example, here you'd click on one of the, you'd have like the old sets. I mean, I still remember back when, oh god, I have so many old packs, but I still remember back when, you know, we had the ability to just have like generic packs, right? You didn't even have to like save up, or you could actually save up packs. You didn't have to like rely every month on like the new thing to come out. And, you know, this was just such a cool time when you could see like there was so much effort put into advertising the gacha banners as well, and, you know, making it so that you would actually be interested in pulling for the sets. And I don't know, I feel like it was the most, even though like them adding the Duel Links function of having like the box system was both good and bad, right? It was good in one way because you knew that you would get what you want eventually, but the way it was implemented with the cost was just horrible. And in terms of how many cards were there, like when you look at the final Bermuda set, if we take a look at the final Bermuda set that is in Vanguard G, if they applied this system from the very beginning, it would have worked just fine, because here in the 150 packs, you have 2 of each GR and 4 of each triple, so you open one box and you're done. So if they had done that from the beginning, I think it would have been quite fine, right? Because that way at least it's much easier to build these decks. But no, like in the, you know, in the beginning it was pretty rough, just because you had to basically, you know, you'd always have to pray that you pull the cards that you want, but then you can at least craft them, right? Because you can craft them with the clan materials that you saved up grinding for ages. Whereas here, it just turned into this weird system where, you know, you basically just had to, like, even if you had the full deck in the main deck, the GR materials would prevent you from finishing the G-Zone. So there were so many issues, and my video on the state of Zero, you know, 3 years later, kind of went over most of these already, and I feel like I'm just kind of like, you know, just repeating these points. But in the end, I'm very thankful for Zero for existing. I'll never forget how excited I used to be for every single set coming out, and I think ever since that excitement started to wane, that's kind of when the beginning of the end started to, like, I used to actually wake up on the first day of a month before G and actually get so hyped about, oh my god, I'm gonna get to do a pack opening stream today. Twitch chat is gonna go crazy. We're gonna have so many fun moments. Like, my general hype to just open gacha packs in a game was never this big. Like, I don't know, I generally don't really like get that excited about, like, you know, JPEGs, but at the beginning of Vanguard Zero, it was so exciting because I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to see how this will be implemented and that will be implemented, and you could kind of look forward to these different, you know, old eras of Vanguard. And then in G, just it became a chore. Like, opening packs and spending money felt like I was forced to, and in reality I was. Like, I didn't want to. I just forced myself because I was like, well, I need to make content and I want to play these decks, and so I need to do it. But back then it was actually so exciting. I would actually wake up in the morning, like I could sometimes like not fall asleep properly the night before because I would be so excited the next day, right? So it's just crazy to think how even that emotion changed so drastically in such a short time span. And I really wish that both Bouchard and Game Studio at least tried to give us that feeling for a little bit longer. Them ending service 2 months later just feels really sad, because I look back at Dragalia Lost and I think like, wow, that was such a nice way to like give us half a year to still enjoy the game. They could make all the packs free, but they still want money, so they're only going to give us like a discount or a sale. Like, you could at least let us enjoy the game to its full extent and like give us all the cards now for these last 2 months, but they still want money. And it's like, at the end of the day, that just kind of wraps it, like sums it up. They still want money, and that's basically how the downfall of Zero began and how it ended, is they still want money. And even now, they still, even announcing end of service, they still want money. So I will still be doing Zero content because I want to fully archive this game, but I want to hear from you as well in the comments, like, what are your emotions regarding Zero ending? I know a lot of you have been waiting for a video from me for quite some time, but for me it's been, honestly, it went from like the 5 stages of grief in one day, basically. But at the beginning, I was just kind of like dumbfounded, despite knowing that it would happen, because it felt so obvious from how JP was being handled. And then I just kind of got angry. Like, I was just angry because I was like, this had so much potential. This had so much potential, and it just felt fumbled left and right. And I don't know who is to blame for that. I don't know if we need to blame anyone, but I honestly think that Vanguard might never have an online simulator after this. I think that, like, Bushiroad has fumbled digital card gaming so badly that unless they partner with Cygames, it's just impossible. Like, I think they literally have to partner with Cygames and let Cygames do everything when it comes to management, because Bushiroad does not know how to do an online card game. And honestly, it's not even just the fact that I would never touch anything by Game Studio at this point. Like, I don't know if I would touch an online card game by Bushiroad anymore either. Like, I play Bang Dream, and I think Bang Dream is quite well done. It's a rhythm game, so obviously it's much different. It feels a lot less kind of like predatory in that sense. There's no like meta and tournaments and stuff like that. You just kind of play for your own fun time. But man, with digital card games, Bushiroad, I think you should just stick to physical, because that's the one thing that you are relatively okay at doing, let's say. I think Vanguard has definitely had its ups and downs, and, you know, Buddy Fight is definitely another, like, I feel the exact same way about Buddy Fight the way I feel about Vanguard Zero, where this had so much potential and you just throw it at the wall. And I think, you know, with Vice, they've been doing a pretty good job, and Vanguard luckily has been doing good too. And like, Shadowverse Evolve has been great, but that's also because they work with Cygames. So I don't know what to end this video on. I can just tell you that I'm very thankful to everyone that has tuned in and watched my Zero content for these years. I do not regret a single bit of it. I don't regret the time I put into this game. I don't regret the money I spent in this game. Everything felt like if it, you know, it came at the right time. It led to a lot of growth for me. It led to me meeting a lot of incredible people in this community and outside of this community too. And if it wasn't for Vanguard Zero, I don't know what my life would be like, because Vanguard Zero like helped to also push Vanguard higher as well and actually make this franchise more popular. And as a result, we are where we are now. And, you know, at Overdress, maybe the game would have ended if it didn't have the income that it generated from Zero during the V-Series, you know, we don't know. But as a result, I'm very thankful to everyone that tuned in. I really cannot thank you enough for those of you that supported me, and also, you know, in a sense supported Vanguard Zero by watching my content, whether you played or didn't. You know, it's fine either way. I think if you are curious, I recommend that you do play Vanguard Zero for these last 2 months, because you never will get to play it ever again. So if you want to experience it, I think for new players, there's a lot of like easy entry bonuses, so you can like build a full deck basically immediately by starting, not just now, but even before you could, especially in global. So I recommend that if you want to try it out, go for it. You don't necessarily have to play with like the new G era stuff. I'm kind of thinking of maybe revisiting some old stuff as well, just playing like Legacy Zero. I think that would be very fun. You know, maybe one day CFA will add like a Zero format where you can just kind of play with Zero cards and Zero rules. That would also be kind of fun, but I definitely think this game did a lot for the franchise, and I'm very sad to see it go, because I think it definitely was a big part of, you know, of a lot of people's lives and just of Vanguard as an IP as a whole. And if Bushiroad ever challenges, you know, making Vanguard go digital again, I really hope they put in a lot of effort. I really hope they do not partner with someone that doesn't care about the franchise. I hope they don't partner with someone that's, you know, too greedy to properly translate the game. I hope that they partner with someone that has the same vision as them to make this the #1 card game in the world, and, you know, to actually give it the treatment that it deserves, because I'm honestly sick and tired having having been with the franchise since day one, seeing them fumble with weird partners like this, whether it's Fudio or Game Studio, is honestly pretty sad. So I really hope that the next time they challenge it, if they ever do, which I personally doubt, yeah, I hope they do better. But for those of you that, you know, to finish off this video, I feel like it's been going on for so long, but I just have a lot to say. For those of you that don't know what to do from now on, that do play Zero, I highly recommend you check out the actual TCG. The standard format is really, really fun right now, and honestly, it's such a great time. And I've been enjoying physical Vanguard TCG the most since like the G era, which is saying a lot. Like I felt quite strong about that statement that like I love Vanguard, like Vanguard peaked in G era kind of feeling. But in my opinion, it's right now very close to that peak again, so I really recommend you play actual physical TCG. Even if you don't have a local community, you can play on Cardfight area for free. You can get Vanguard Deer Days, it's on Steam. It is a bit expensive though, but if you want to play for free, there's Cardfight area. On my Discord, you can actually search for matches as well if you want to, so you don't have to deal with like random opponents on Cardfight area. And then if the actual Vanguard IP doesn't interest you anymore, then, you know, there's definitely lots of cool digital card games you can play as well. I personally really like Shadowverse, so I definitely do recommend that too. The Pokemon TCG recently got a new simulator as well, which, while is not very great, definitely gives you a very free-to-play way to play the Pokemon traded card game as well. So there's definitely lots of things you can do, but whether this is the last video you ever watch from me and you never touch the Vanguard IP again, or whether I see you from now on, you know, in actual Vanguard TCG tournaments, or maybe we sometimes meet at an event, or, you know, I just see you commenting in my actual Vanguard TCG videos, I really do appreciate it, whether you've been here since Zero came out, or longer than that, or just recently. I appreciate you for supporting my Zero content, and I hope to still see you guys around for my future videos and, you know, playing the actual TCG, or maybe you just have some interest in keeping up with the physical TCG. But thank you so much once again to all of you that have supported my content and Vanguard Zero so far. As I said before, I'll still be doing some more content for the game before it ends and doing streams and stuff, so I hope to see you there. But anyway, that is going to be it for this very long video for me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please do leave it a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.